What's going on? What's going on, brother?
Peace, peace.
Um, I first want to take the time out and say peace, peace, and welcome to Isis Wisdom Live, the Isis Wisdom Live podcast. And I have a special guest tonight, the algorithm extraordinaire, Alkebulan 44. How are you, brother?
I'm doing amazing. I'm doing wonderful. Yeah, and I'm excited for the show. You and I, our information parallels a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So I feel like we're really gonna take the family to another level intellectually. So I'm excited about this one.
I am too. I am too. So, this is my first time that my audience has had a chance to check you out. And I want you to kind of tell my audience a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those who do follow me, they know, my forte is science and mathematics. And I've always had a passion for science and mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
Because here about 2 years ago or so, I was in school for mechatronic engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So even at a younger age, I was more of an abstract thinker at a younger age. So I was more of a creative. My passion actually was originally acting. So I loved the idea of the psychology of acting, but I was always into the props and always into the aesthetics of a set. So even at a younger age, me and my twin brother, we would like engineer like makeshift cities in my parents' basement. We would like break down computers, redesign them, look at electric circuits. So our way of thinking has always been very creative, me especially. So as I got older, I got more into the logical way of thinking, more of the left brain. I was always interested in mathematics. I mean, that was my thing even in high school, and that's why I even received the scholarship that I did. I was top five in a class of 30 students, in my senior year, dealing with algebra. So, I've always had a knack for math, but, coming out of high school, I started to get more into art history,
Mm-hmm.
so I began to juxtapose a lot of the information that I was learning from school and recognizing that, damn, like we were the ones who actually created these concepts of mathematics and science and engineering and all these things. So that's when I really went 110% with it. So fast forward, going into college, my thing, I stuck with it, So I started to get more into mechatronic engineering. And for
Mm-hmm.
those who aren't familiar with that, that's basically dealing with robotics. So it's classes that you're taking in reference to computer science, mechanical engineering, and electrical engineering. So it's all three in one. So I started to get heavy into that, but then I would always like apply those same principles, which are more left brain, to the right aspect or right side of the brain, dealing with metaphysics and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear that our ancestors were, engineering the fabric of space and time, they were building pyramids using mathematics. I was always interested in, okay, high school, I mastered math. I understood formulas and equations and things of that nature, but our ancestors weren't necessarily using the Western way of thinking more from a linear perspective. They were dealing with, symbols. They were dealing with the stars. They were dealing with, latitude versus longitudinal lines on the planet. They knew the geometry of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So they would utilize these aspects of what we call mathematics and be able to, process certain levels of information, from different star systems. So when I started to hear that, and then, I started to again get deeper into the mathematics, dealing with the left side or the left brain, the more logical, analytical way of thinking. I'm like, okay, well, I see how the two marry or how they come together. As electromagnetic beings, naturally we self-engineer our reality every day. And if we are able to couch our everyday reality into science and be able to explain, for example, how the mind is a magnetic field, then that'll give us it'll give us the ability to architect our reality at will, you know.
Yes.
So, when our, again, ancestors were talking about they were scientists by the way of understanding the mechanics of how our third dimensional reality worked and how
Mm-hmm.
it juxtaposed with the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So, we always tend to look at the effect of everything. For example, like when I look around my room, I'm seeing the effect of what has came into fruition, but I'm always also interested what was the cause of the effect. So it's us as a people getting more relatable and more familiar with the unseen reality and being able to use our mind or our magnetic field to self-engineer our reality at will on an everyday basis, because by nature we are naturally all engineers at the end of the day,
And
you
that's
know.
something I've definitely been observing too, just going through my own personalized experience. And we definitely are. If we're not engineers, we're programmers, master
Exactly.
programmers. I'm definitely a master programmer. I'm always
Exactly.
creating programs and things like that. So yes, I get it. And it's crazy because it's literally naturally within us because of our bloodlines, our cosmic bloodlines, the different incarnations we had and the different experiences that we had. Those things are stored within our DNA. And so when you're tapped in the correct way, you can begin to start doing things in the unseen world that will affect this world.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when we talk about, again, our ancestors, they were into microbiology. When you talk about the
Hmm.
DNA, um the concept was the inner mysteries. So when you talk about the inner mysteries, or the esoteric per se, you're talking more about an inner world. And their whole concept was, how can we duplicate this concept that we see as the sun? When we see the sun, what actually is it, and what does it have to do with the inside of us?
Right.
So when they study microbiology, and they came across DNA, they came across what we call, amino acids today. All of these things are on the wall in Kemet, but again, they use symbology to it. So in order to duplicate what they, created as a concept of, say, like a supreme being or a higher, a higher self, they had to emanate things outside of them, like the pyramids, by studying, for example, what the neurons was. What are the geometry of the neurons? What does the DNA look like? To keep that type of fractal reality going as a continuation from the connection to the unseen to the seen world. So everything was about going within, studying the inside of the body, and then duplicating that on the outside, so that we as a people today can have a frame of reference of how the body works and its connection to the stars and the sun and things of that nature. But yeah, it's all relative to, about, again, being able to grasp the concept of how the fabric of our reality works, and overstanding outside of what we've been taught. um, we're dealing with, an unseen force that's omnipresent, but it's on the tip of our nose. So even when you look at the Dogons deified a deity called Nomos, which was a fish deity. But you got to ask the question, why was it a fish? Um, we understand today that when we look into, what we qualify as empty space, is actually what scientists consider today the ethers,
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature, dark matter, dark energy.
Mm-hmm.
But our ancestors understood that it had an electric viscosity to it, meaning it acted as a fluid. So when you would see in antiquity, whether even if you look in the Sumerian tablets and things of that nature, they have on their body scales like fish, because they understood that this primordial source that we're always swimming in, per se, consists of information. So in order to access this information, again, it's about going within to access not only the information within, but understand that DNA acts as a laser. And when you study something called laser interferometry, you understand that the DNA actually translates your genetic information across this space that we qualify as the ethers.
Mm-hmm.
But the ethers has a specific geometry, in order for this information to be translated on, and that's the only reason the way the information can be translated.
Interesting,
So
interesting enough that you said going within.
mhm,
And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily understand what it means when you use the word going within.
mhm.
So let's talk about that. What does it mean to go within from your perspective?
So for me, well, so we could speak on, for example, one technique that everybody is familiar with. When we talk about going within, meditation, of course, is one way to go within. Every day when we're bombarded with thoughts,
Hmm.
we never tend to stay present. And the key factor of going in is to understand how what we call the subconscious mind works. But when I refer to the subconscious mind, I like to refer to the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's dealing with the parts of the bodies that are involuntary. So when you're talking about the heartbeat, we're not consciously doing it; it's doing it on its own. So it's the ability to tap in, um, by way of going within to see how the mechanics of the inside of the body works. But within that dynamic, you also begin to see, a whole different world that we're not privy to.
Hmm.
And so within that world, we also have signatures, from past life experiences. We have DNA, of course, that encodes certain
Hmm.
experiences from past
Hmm.
lives, from this life. So when you tend to go into a meditation, you tend to stimulate information or experiences within those signatures and thus bring it to the conscious mind. So that way that can give you the capacity to be able to heal it in the present moment. So going within really deals with dealing with the inside of the subconscious mind, or dealing with the inner mysteries, what I referred to before. And that's dealing with how the mechanics of the inside of the body works. So that way you can, bring about certain experiences that you've experienced or that you've had in the past, and then, bring them to the conscious mind. So meditation um, is one way on how to do it.
Hmm. And also, I would like to add on to that, which also still puts you in conjunction with the meditation. And I've explained on several different occasions that you have your original ancient primordial spark.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of us that are very primordial, we don't realize how old we are. So
Hmm.
Source, when Source went to create you from the beginning, when you came from nothingness or the ethers, there was a spark. Once that spark started to ignite, then you were born whatever you were. So some of you might have came out as an angelic, an angel. Some of you guys may have came out as an ET. Some of you guys may have came out as gods. Some of you guys may have came out as dragons.
Hmm.
So whatever it is that you are, when you originally came into fruition, so to speak, that is your ancient spark. Now, in the process of that, because you understand that we all are source when it comes to the collective, we all have that source spark within us.
Hmm.
So if you understand that you're source, you also understand that you're a mini creator. So as you're having these experiences through your reincarnations, what's happening is that you are incarnating in different galaxies and different star systems. And so most people don't even realize that they have galactic families.
Hmm.
Yeah, that they can call upon courts, um, whole councils that they
Hmm.
have access to. And depending on which aspect that they're calling upon, which is a reincarnated version of themselves, they can talk to that other version of themselves and get information.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what I explain to my audience is that I don't read, I don't have to read books. I mean, I have books, I have plenty of, I have a library of books. But when it comes to getting some of this higher knowledge and this higher sciences, I get all my information from within. And
Hmm.
people seem to have the problem with that. And I'm like, that's okay. I said, but you got to understand that we're now shifting into Aquarius.
Hmm.
So the old way of how we used to do things has to change. And we have to grow. We have to evolve. So now what's happening is a lot of us are growing and evolving from reading books, which is nothing more than somebody else's program and understanding of what they think is.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what's happening is people, if you're expanding in your consciousness, and you do that through healing, but if you expand your consciousness, then what happens is you get access to higher knowledge, you get access to other higher beings that can pass down knowledge, or just getting access to higher knowledge because that's already within you. But in
Mhm.
order for you to get access to this information, you have to expand your consciousness. And if you don't, you can't expand your consciousness unless you're healing the heart space. Because the heart space, when I go within, I go right in within my heart space. Okay, I literally visualize myself going in the heart space. Now, unbeknownst to most people, your quantum computer, and everybody has one, sits inside your heart space, which you can access the Akashic records right through the heart space
Mhm.
through that quantum computer.
Mhm.
For those of
Mhm.
you that have spiritual hearing, you have the ability to receive communication from your quantum computer. And your quantum computer is going to instruct you where you need to go, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to explore my heart space, and that's where a lot of things are stored. Your gifts are stored in your heart space. That's the way the creator set it up. All your gifts, all your clairs and everything sit in your heart space. So you can tell how much you're healing or how healed you have become based upon the gifts that you have that come online, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and a lot of that stems from healing. So you may have some people that whose things are online, and some people who may have a hard time, but it has a lot to do with healing different areas and different layers of their healing that must take place through those aspects.
To those aspects, right?
Right.
Right.
Those aspects, like there's times where I can literally feel, like if I'm offended by something, I can literally feel one of my aspects getting upset. And then I'm tapping into the aspect to find out what's going on. And then I'm finding out that this aspect is having an issue with the same person I'm having an issue with. But then when I go to look at the person and see their aspect, I'm seeing that that person's aspect and my aspect are like husband and wife.
Mm.
And so the
Mm.
same thing that's
Mhm.
playing out in this lifetime is actually playing out in real time with that aspect.
Mhm.
So I want you
Mhm.
guys to understand that the past, the present, and future goes on with you at the same time. You are a multi-dimensional being. Don't look at this from a linear perspective. There's nothing linear about what we're talking about.
Right. Exactly. And for me, the third dimension is more like a stage. You have the capacity to access these aspects. And I've said it before, like when you start to acknowledge that you have a certain level of order within your reality, small things that you may do that you didn't do 2 weeks prior to, like, for example, reordering, your shoes at the door. Every day you're waking up now, you're making up your bed, um, folding the clothes a certain way. Sometimes people start to stumble upon these characteristics, and it's something that they weren't necessarily doing before, but now they're acknowledging it. They can call it in the third dimension cleanliness, or you starting to be more organized. But we all have to understand that your genetics affect your behavior. So what's happening on the outside is what is being done on the inside. And especially with the activity of the sun, the sun specifically, is carrying a certain level of information dealing with order. it always
Mhm.
it always does. And what it does biologically is it begins to self-assemble your viral DNA. So when you see a certain order happening within your personal reality, that's predicated on the DNA going through a level of healing, via self-assembly. Scientists today call it supercoiling, when the DNA literally is folding in on itself in order to know more about itself. And this then gives it the capacity to develop more helixes, which now leaves you more access to information. So, to tap into these different aspects of who you are, you have to play out the mythology. If you resonate with a specific, constellation, for example, and you understand certain characteristics through mythology on, how these, for example, beings may have demonstrated themselves, you have to play out certain aspects of that self within the third dimension in order to tap into that specific frequency to then bring about different characteristics that are innately within you to the surface. And you begin to see your physical reality reflect that. Now, the ancestors may begin to now grant you different assignments predicated on past experiences that you have went through, but that's why people are, comfortable. They tend to get comfortable because they don't like change, but change happens when you begin to tap into different aspects of yourself when you're talking about healing. So
Yep.
one day you may be in one experience and may be comfortable, then the next day your reality does a complete 180. But that's the
Yep.
universe testing you, but also expecting you to have enough courage to follow through with that assignment, because then after that you'll be granted higher levels of assignments because you're dealing with the healing process of getting over certain signatures that have been inscribed in you genetically from past experiences or from your multidimensional selves, and moving forward within this stage that we exist in, which is the third dimension. So your body just serves as a conduit. It serves as a conduit or a vehicle to tap into these aspects. But you can't be afraid to take on certain archetypal energy, because when you say that you are God, when you say that you're a God, when you say that you're Ptah or Heru, best believe that this archetypal energy is activated, and it seeks those it resonates with. So, when you begin to actually demonstrate yourself as who you say you are, you're resonating with a different aspect of you in a multidimensional universe, which is going to show itself in your physical reality. And like I said, today, it may be comfortable for you, but then the next day, your reality does a complete 180. You may be driving down the street the last couple of weeks, on your way to work, everything seems like it's peaceful. And then the next day you get in a car accident, you know.
Mhm.
But that car accident serves as a paradigm shift predicated on you now moving down another path, because now this is going to get you to tap into those energies that you've been calling yourself within the last couple of months in order to gear you towards raising to a higher level of consciousness predicated on healing.
I
And
love
just,
the
just
way that you pointed that out. I love that. I just want to say I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
literally, that is literally what happened to me right after the solar eclipse. I can't even make this up.
Mm,
That's literally what
mm,
happened. It was like probably there was probably some signs I was leading up to it probably about 2 weeks prior as I started seeing the energy change. And then it was like the solar eclipse happened and it was like my life literally shifted in an entire different direction than the original direction that I wanted to go on. But
mm,
in that happening, I chose not to get caught up in the energetic chaos that was going on at that time. And what I chose to do was I chose to stay on path and focus and continue to keep healing,
mm,
which
mm.
then propelled me to my elevation and expansion of consciousness into the higher dimensions.
Right.
But
Now,
what most people don't know is during that time period, that solar eclipse,
mm,
that's when that great split happened.
mm, mm, mm. That's when the great split happened. And I wanted to ask you too, through the experience of you uh going through say a 180 post eclipse, how did you personally react to the change of trajectory in your experience?
It was difficult at first just because of the energy and the type of energy at the time that was projecting. There was a lot of distortion going on at the time. There was a lot of you got to take consideration. You had, I think it was a an eclipse. I think before the solar eclipse, I think there was a lunar eclipse. I think before that,
Hmm.
something was going on with the moon before that. Then the solar eclipse happened during the time of a Mercury retrograde, and then something else was going on with another planet. So you got to take consideration just dealing with those planetary alignments at that time was crazy. And then you had the sun that was eclipsed by the black sun. And a lot of people thought that it was eclipsed by the moon, and it was never eclipsed by the moon. They had already did the science on that in terms of checking to see when the next eclipse would take place with the moon, and they were saying something's going on with the dates. This shouldn't be
Right.
happening, but it wasn't told to anyone that this was a particular eclipse with that black sun that takes place every so many thousands of years here on Earth. And
Hmm.
so most people don't even know what the black sun is, what it does, what the even black what the black sun order even is, and what it's really about. So
Hmm.
what I'll say to anyone when it comes to dealing with eclipses, just in general, An eclipse does exactly what it's supposed to do. It eclipses situations that are not viable for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you're talking
Mhm.
about a complete interruption of 1 minute it was going this way, and then all of a sudden the veil came down, and you're seeing everything as is, not fantasy. You're seeing everything as is.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
no, there ain't no sugarcoating it. There ain't no rose-colored glasses. It ain't none of that. It's like all of a sudden your eyes become very clear about everything and everybody you allowed into your life, everybody around you. You become very clear about that all of a sudden.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
what it did was it literally eclipsed me completely out of an entire situation that I was, but that later revealed that I wasn't even supposed to be in the first place.
Right.
So,
Same.
in the process of that, um, I had no choice but to go ahead and move forward and not get caught up in that energy at that time because there was a lot of crazy energy that was going on at that time. And it was hurtful. You know what I'm saying? When you're going through that, because it's very abrupt, right? It's a very abrupt thing when it first hurts. But then as time begins to pass and you're focusing on your healing, you start seeing it from someone was talking to me and kind of shifted my perspective about what I was experiencing, what I was looking at. Then I began to start to see the grass green again, the sun shining again.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
having my guides explain to me certain things that I need to do to get to where I was going. And that time was crucial. It was a
Mhm.
very crucial moment for me at that moment. And I didn't realize how crucial it was for me at that time. But I was able to get over, and then I was able to elevate to where I needed to go so I can continue to assist the collective with the work that I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? So eclipses, when eclipses come about, I just want everybody to keep in mind those things bring changes upon your life. And sometimes, you might think a situation is good for you. You might think that, but you don't realize that some situations could be draining your energy or draining you in certain ways that is preventing you from taking yourself to the next level.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
then next thing
Yeah.
certain people were leaving out, but then new people started coming in like shortly after that. New people started coming in, and the new people that started coming in were more on my level. You know what I'm saying? In terms of how I see things and how I process things, even energetic wise, it even feels very different for me. So I'm grateful now that I can see it now, and it's just been great. But I just wanted to just point that little piece out about what the actual eclipse is actually doing, what they're for.
Right, right. Yeah, same. Like you said, the eclipse is there to eclipse, what's
Yeah.
not necessary in your life. And see, a lot of people have been doing the healing prior
Yes.
to the eclipse. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They've already been doing the work. And see, with our people, we tend to be more reactionary. When we hear about an eclipse, that's when we want to start doing some healing and getting into some sort of alignment,
Hmm.
with ourselves. But the idea is to always be doing the healing. Because again, if we're talking about different aspects of ourselves that are multidimensional, we got to understand that the healing is deeper than this literal reality that we're existing in now.
Boom.
So like I said, you may be picking up traits, 2, 3, 4 years down the line that you weren't doing prior to, but you have to keep in mind that you're tethered to different celestial bodies. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is, when we talk about the heart space, you want to become the center of gravity within your own reality. And what I mean is, you want to participate with your reality. Our ancestors understood that we live in a participatory universe. And I asked you that question in reference to how you responded to your paradigm shift, is because, our ancestors always understood that the goal is to be present, because that's how you properly extrapolate the lesson out of the experience,
Yeah.
So the present is nothing more than the quote unquote future rolling backwards and the past being emitted forward, coming together as what you qualify in science as a standing wave. And that's what we're physically observing as our visible reality. Third dimensional reality is a standing wave
Hmm.
via pressure. So within that space, the goal is to be observant within your immediate reality, second to second to second to second to second, even if it's an undesirable experience. Because when you do that, you become the center of gravity within your own reality.
Yep.
Because in that moment, when you're neutral within a negative experience, you're utilizing the heart space, because now what you're doing is stepping up the acceleration of the heart, because the heart literally begins to pull from gravity, increasing the voltage in the body. So that's when you start to feel that enthusiasm. That's when you start to feel that, hope, like, hopefulness, and that sense of um, um, that sense of what we qualify as positivity. But as we all should know, the heart is what produces the magnetic field of the mind. So when you can control your mind or magnetic field, and within an undesirable experience, when you notice your paradigm shifting, you become the student of your participatory universe. You become neutral, and you thus extrapolate from the outer experience the lesson that you're supposed to learn. And when you receive that lesson, or that assignment, that your ancestors granted you by utilizing your heart space, not being judgmental, having a level of courage, lacking fear. That's when you get to move on to the next level. Because, like I said, literally your physical heart, the ratio and how it beats changes when you develop courage. When
Yes.
you can exist in the eye of the storm, and you can look all around you, see the chaos, but be optimistic about it. Because they always say in the center of a hurricane is the most peaceful spot. It's very quiet. But nobody would ever know that until you experience it by being present. You
Yeah.
see, so
That
understanding
present is
that
serious.
yeah, so understanding that concept, like I said, when you're present in an undesirable experience, you increase the electrical force within the body by the heart beating at a certain ratio. And that acceleration that happens is your heart literally pulling charge from gravity to expand your magnetic field, to thus reciprocate the electric force, which now begins to pull and attract things to you, or thus, let's not even pull, but implode things to you, that you were looking to get out of the experience, which is the lesson. You
Yeah.
see, so it's just like I said, and how we started the conversation. The idea is to just understand the mechanics of our reality by not only understanding that our ancestors, they didn't say they were engineers for no reason. They just understood how not only the body worked, but how the body was connected to the unseen reality. So
Right.
that's a big piece of it.
Now let's talk about the algorithm.
Okay.
I want you to kind of explain to people what it is that you're actually doing to come up with the answers that you come up with when you're asking people. Like, I'm on your page and I do watch you, and I see the patterns, and you'll ask your followers, can you guess what color? So I clearly see that you're definitely watching some patterns and things like that. But can you kind of explain to my audience exactly this science that you're doing and what it is that you're doing, and how does this affect the collective?
So it's interesting, because we naturally, as a people, we're not linear thinkers, right? So there is no formula, there is no equation that I'm writing down, any scientific data, any analytics. um you know so with that being said, the experience itself and where I'm getting the algorithms is personal. And when I
Okay.
say it's personal, it's through personal experiences that I'm having, that I'm resonating with. So whether it's information that I'm into at the time, whether it's the dynamic of the relationship that I'm in, whether it's the dynamic that I have with my parents at the time, whether it's what I'm personally experiencing. So what I've recognized over time after doing this is that we're all collectively symbiotic in relationship based on morphic resonance. And what I mean is that we're all going through different experiences, but the same lesson. So my experiences may be different from the person next door, but the lesson may be the same.
Yes.
So so what I'm presenting is predicated on what I'm personally experiencing. And I present it, and then I bear witness to the fact that this cosmic story that's playing out is not only relative to me, but it's relative to the collective conscious, you
Yes, it
know.
is.
But
Yes, it is.
the idea is to have the eyes to see. Now, I just briefly explain, the idea of where the algorithms are coming from, in reference to me resonating, say, with certain colors or certain numbers. But like everybody else, I see a number over and over and over again. Um, but then I see, a color over and over and over again. But when I see these colors and I see these numbers, they hit a little different. That feeling is a feeling that is what you qualify, or what I call the signal, or a form of confirmation. So when I see brown like over and over again, I'm like, boom, that's it. That's the algorithm. Or when I see, the number 55, I'm like, boom, that's it. That's the algorithm. But I also know that, again, these colors and these numbers are not only personal to me, but it's a cosmic story that's playing out, that's connected to these colors and numbers. So when you
Mm,
can juxtapose all the events that are associated with the number 55 and the color brown, you see the bigger picture, because it all serves as a common denominator, you see. So going back to what I was saying about being present, um you know for me, naturally, I've always been observant. I've always, had the capacity to observe things, patterns, things of that nature. That's just always been a thing that I was, naturally gifted at. I've naturally been, quiet. I'm more laid back, so I don't do a lot of talking per se, but I'm very observant. I'm a people watcher. Like, I watch people's body language. I'm observing how people come across, eye contact, their energy before they even speak. I pick up on their aura. It's almost like I can read them to a certain extent.
mhm, mhm.
So I'm very tapped into an unseen, paradigm. So with that being said, that is what I'm enthusiastic about. So moment to moment to moment to moment, to me, everything is spiritual. Whether it's you taking out the trash, on a regular Wednesday, or whether it's, you bending down and tying your shoe, because we have to understand the concept is to marry the two worlds, the physical with the spiritual. Because if we all understand that we came here for a cosmic purpose, that in and of itself is spiritual. So I don't separate the two. See, what scientists and what Western science do is they compartmentalize the two concepts, and they leave spirituality out of science.
Yes,
What
they
I
do every time. It makes no sense to me.
Right. So what I've done is bring the two back together and understand, well, wait, me sitting on this bed, like in this room doing this live, this is spiritual. This is divine. This is all God engineering, you see. But see, people tend to separate the two. In their mind, they're like, I got to go to work, then I got to come home and meditate. They split the two. Them being at work is spiritual. So when you understand that, you'd have a different level of enthusiasm for life in general. And the etymology for the word enthusiasm is to be possessed by God. So when you're enthusiastic about the most minute things, nothing grand, nothing big, it can be as deep as you going to the gym, or it can be something as simple as, you cooking in the kitchen. It's all spiritual. So when
Mhm.
you acknowledge the two worlds simultaneously, you're working with both sides of the brain. So that allows you now to be a whole brain thinker, but also to be present. You see? So again, I'm in this space, second to second to second to second to second to second to second. And going back into the science, when you understand that the future is information rolling backwards, and the
Mhm.
past is information being emitted forward, producing the present moment, which is a standing wave, which is the visible light spectrum that we're physically observing, then you understand, well, wait a minute. If the present moment is made up of future information rolling backwards, then that tells me that what I'm currently doing is foreshadowing something to come. So if I'm always seeing brown, something relative to brown is going to play out. Something
I think
relative
that's
to
so interesting. It is another way of giving foresight. It's just your technique is just different. I have it. There's a process I go through too whenever I'm giving out information as well, or I'll start
right.
getting downloads, or I'll start seeing certain things take place, where I
So,
can foresee ahead of time certain things that are coming down the pipeline. There are things that are playing out right now in front of everybody's face that I talked about a year or two ago. You know what I'm saying? So
right,
it's just very
right.
interesting to see these things play out, and if you guys get a chance, make sure you check out my 2024 predictions. I did that, a couple months ago, and I'm going to do a second 2024 predictions in June, and there's been so many changes, so many things that's happened since then, that's why I'm doing a second one to let people know the forecast for the next 6 months after that, because there's been a lot that happened since we came in through January up to this point. Now, I don't really count January as New Year. To me, it
Mhm.
starts in March. You know what I'm saying? But there's still things that are happening right now that I can see coming down the pipeline that I definitely want to bring out to the public.
But see, the deepest and the most simple part about how you and I can foreshadow something to play out is confidence. It's the ultimate level of having trust. You know,
Yeah,
it's delegating your authority, and what I mean is you're trusting the universe. You don't feel like that you have a sense of control because that's where ego steps in. When you feel
yep,
like you have to control everything within your dynamic or your reality, ego is like, I gotta hold on, like, I'm too comfortable here. But when you
yeah.
tend to let go, and what they say, let God, that's how you begin to pour in that information that's rolling backwards, and you start to see how the synchronicity plays out because you're delegating your authority to the universe.
Flow
You know what
state.
I'm s- so again, when I'm talking about very simple, something as scientific as a standing wave representing our immediate reality, waves, we're dealing with water. Like I said in the beginning of the bill, we exist in a primordial source, what the ancestors called the primordial waters of noon.
Yep.
So to see something is denoted as SEA, which deals with water, which deals with waves.
Hmm.
So to see what's coming before it plays out is the capacity to decode electromagnetic waves that are rolling backwards that carry information and thus translated as such. And, have the confidence to present it in the present moment. And thus, when you do that, you collapse the wave, and that wave manifests as what you see playing out as brown or the number 55. But it's the audacity to say that something's going to play out before it does. That's really what it boils down to, is to
Yeah,
have the
and they have a hard
audacity to
time
do
with
it.
that. They have a hard time with the people have a hard time with that too, because what I started realizing was I was seeing things I had way ahead of my time. And this has been going on since my younger years. I was seeing things way ahead of my time. And I started realizing, I said, damn, certain things that we don't realize is that we may have foresight on something. And then all of a sudden we never take in consideration, or we never count the fact that there are timelines that shift. And not to mention, people are jumping timelines all the time. I'm constantly skipping timelines just based upon my healing. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on with me healing wise? I don't stay
Mm-hmm.
in the same timeline for long periods of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
then now things begin to start shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Mm-hmm.
literally seeing that, or seeing things play out, let's say something I've said play out 2 years later, and people will come back to me and be like, fam, remember when you said this and this and this and this? They's like, yo, you was ahead of your time. You told us this stuff way back when. So I was seeing past certain timelines even, and didn't
Right.
even realize that's what I was doing,
Right.
which is bananas.
Right.
That is
So
bananas. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm
no,
seeing
but
stuff
see,
play out now, and I'm just like, I talked about this shit 2 years ago.
years ago. But see, again, we're tapping into that unseen reality. When I say unseen, we're really going within to tap into it. This is why, and you go with the science again. This is why Albert Einstein left out, a specific equation within his general theory of relativity. It was a fifth equation that he left out. Um, in this fifth equation, there was a scientist by the name of Kaluza that came through and reconstructed his equation and added a fifth one to his original four. Before, he had three, space, one of time, four dimensions. Kaluza came through and introduced a fifth equation, or a fifth dimension. Now, what is this fifth dimension? This dimension, in their perspective, was time. So it was four now spatial and one of time, which is five dimensions. But what they came across is this fifth dimension is where everything comes into fruition from. And they also understood that this fifth dimension is the access point where you can get from the physical to the unseen reality, because this specific dimension, the fifth dimension, which Einstein purposely left out of his equation, is the doorway to the other side. and they
Mm-hmm.
understood that this specific doorway had a geometry. It had a cylindrical geometry, which is what you can actually refer to as a spiral, and it was very small. Today they call it the Planck dimension, but they say it's the smallest wavelength within the universe before you get to the other side. So
Mm.
when they gained access to this fifth dimension, they said, "No, no, we can't give this to the public because they're going to know what the doorway is to the other side." So they also hid from you the idea that the heart is what gets you access to this other side, because the heart is what dictates time. When you're doing something you love doing or you enjoy doing, time seems to fly. They
Mm-hmm.
say time flies when you're having fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're having fun, your mind or your magnetic field that's produced by the heart is spiraling this space. So you're literally folding space and time inward because you're getting now access to this doorway, which is that fifth equation that Einstein left out. And that doorway is to the other side. So, you know, the heart is what dictates time. So, this is why it's important to understand that when you're present within your, again, immediate reality, you have the capacity to control time,
Mm-hmm.
because, in essence, you can say there is no time.
That
Because
is true. I've done experience doing that. And it's a really trippy, it's really, it will really trip you out. But I had an experience, I was actually shown how to do that. And literally everything just stopped all around me. And
right.
that trick for 30 seconds, I was
Hmm.
like, you have got to be kidding me.
Hmm.
And then everything started back up again. And I was like, I didn't even know I could actually do that. So I thought that was very, very interesting. I think that's very, very interesting that you're speaking about this.
Yeah, yeah. The heart is what manipulates time. When they talk about, like, for example, time travel and things of this nature, this is all predicated on the ratio, and not only how the heart beats, but there's 7 layers that make up the outer representation of the heart, and once they fold and collapse on each other simultaneously, that's what increases the acceleration through the heart. You feel that when you feel love, you feel that when you feel compassion, when you are with your partner, and it's resistible. It's like you're attracted to your partner. Or, for example, when you see a homeless person on the street and you feel a level of compassion, you see the babies out over in Palestine or whatever, laying dead on the street, you feel a level of compassion. You're creating a center of gravity within the heart, which is increasing the acceleration, which means all 7 muscles that make up the outer representation of your heart are collapsing in on themselves simultaneously, which is increasing that acceleration. Now, at those times when you feel that compassion, that's the time to create. That's the time to bring things into fruition.
That's the
Because
best time for you to tap into your inner child, because that's where all of your God powers come from. And your
that
creativity and your imagination. That's where all your God powers come from.
exactly, exactly. So, like I've always said, like, you can't even say the word compassion without saying compass, and you can't denote compass to anything but a magnetic field, because when you use magnetism tends to guide you in the trajectory where you're supposed to go, predicated on changing the ratio of where your heart beat by doing things that you love doing, being around, surrounded by people you love, doing things that you're inspired to do, putting yourself in places that facilitate a level of healing. You change the ratio of the heart, so the heart is what controls time.
That's
So
interesting. I never thought about it that way. What you're saying is fact. I just never thought about it that way.
yeah, 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 and that's, see, this is why, like, when our ancestors wanted to understand microbiology, they understood the heart was not what they tell us the heart is today.
No, it's
Yeah.
really not. It's really not. But that's why it's so important that you do your healing. That's why
Hmm.
it's so important. Like you're breaking down the mechanics and the scientific behind it in terms of the functions and things like that. Now, to add on to what you're saying, I'm interpreting it like, okay, guys, so yeah, when you begin to heal and you do your shadow work and you begin to start doing with the layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of your shadow work, and you begin to start releasing and crying and letting things go, burning letters if you have to, whatever it is that you need to do to be able to fully express yourself and release the trapped energy that's in your heart space out, you begin to start learning a new version of who you are. You begin to start learning more
Mm-hmm.
about you
Yeah.
and your totality.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm just coming about it from
Yeah,
a
I know.
different. So
Yeah.
but
No.
this is
Yeah.
dope, though. 'Cause I like the way I like the dynamic you're bringing in. I just want to jump on and say, okay, so what I got from that is this. You know what I'm saying?
Right, 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 right. Yeah, I mean that's it. That's it. That's it. But like I said at the beginning of the the live, my forte has always been science. So I'm like, yo, like these, our ancestors, they were building pyramids and so I'm like, what type of brains did these individuals have? How did they know that, they had to build the pyramid at the center of, it's on a certain ley line on the earth? Like, how were they able to, understand what the speed
Well,
of
that's
light
what
was?
they were doing to create the actual reality. You know what I'm saying? To establish the 3D on the planet from the very beginning. And that's what a lot of us didn't understand at the time. These pyramids that are on this planet and they're set up a specific way to give
Mhm,
everybody the 3D reality. And that actually started off with Andromedans. They're the ones who actually came in and began
mm.
to start creating the 3D reality and began to start putting the pyramids. And it wasn't just them, but I'm just saying they were the ones who were mapping out and setting up the actual reality that we know today as a third dimension.
That's interesting you say that because speaking about the Andromedans, these beings, let's just say the Andromedans, for example, they're a higher order, of extra, we say terrestrials. But saying that to say, when you say they created the third dimension, um, the Andromedans more specifically put people in certain simulations. Um, you know, and they sit back and watch, because again, when we understand that it's all a simulation, that's when we begin to really understand that it could be manipulated. So that I just want to say that I've read that, yeah, the Andromedans, they set up certain simulations in certain people's reality as a form of initiation to see if they can go
Yes.
through go through certain tests. You know,
Yes. Yeah,
to
Source does it. Source constantly tests people all the time. And,
hmm
and everybody's whole life, everybody's living in different simulations. And I teach people and train people how to get rid of the simulations that they're under because they didn't realize they're even in the simulation. But there are simulations of poverty. If you speak negatively against yourself, then you're going to create that simulation of actually living in poverty. Meanwhile, the people that are next to you are doing just fine. And these are people that are next to you that you know, but they may not be operating in your simulation. They're
right,
not operating in your
right,
reality. So
right.
therefore, they're having a total different experience than let's say you are. And then people are sitting up there trying to figure out, well, they get mad or they get angry, they get jealous, they get envy, and all this other stuff that comes to them. But they don't realize that they're doing that to themselves based upon how they think, based upon the words they speak out of their mouth, based upon lack of vision, lack of imagination, not healing the inner child, et cetera, et cetera. Could be environmental factors, could be so many different things that go on that can bombard a person because we do live on the planet of distortion. So you got all this distortion going on that's constantly testing you or always getting in the way, that you got to find a way to clear out all that distortion so you can just be clear
hmm
about what it is you're trying to accomplish.
hmm
Accomplish.
hmm
But I help people drop to get rid of those simulations in a heartbeat. Like literally, they'll feel it. They'll feel it. Like as soon as I tell them what to do, they'll feel it like boom. And they're like, I feel so much better. What the hell? I
mm
said,
mm
you created the simulation. You did that.
mm
But you point a
mm.
finger at everybody else. But you did
Right,
it.
right, right. You did it. Yeah,
And that's a
yeah. That's
hard reality an appeal that people don't like to deal with. They don't like to deal with accountability and they don't like to
accountability.
deal
Right,
with responsibility. It's easy. The unhealed, they're the main ones that will point the finger at somebody else. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that for a minute.
right.
Okay. Yeah, I did my shit. Okay. As grown person, you own up to shit. I did my shit, right? But let's talk about your stuff over here though. Let's
Right,
talk about
right.
your lack of this and this and this over here. And did you do this and did you follow this protocol? And did you do this and did you do that? Nah, okay. So then basically, you created this whole entire reality for you to have this experience because in your unhealed mind, you've already told yourself that these were going to be the experiences that you were going to have because you haven't healed from your past. So now
Mm,
what's happening is you're bringing in your past back into your future or your present.
mhm, mhm,
And you're
mhm.
creating scenarios and situations that didn't have to be there But
Right.
because you
Right.
weren't present, as you say, you weren't present, you didn't have proper discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to have proper discernment if you're not healed in the heart space, because you got to have the logical and the heart space to be able to properly discern properly.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to feel and also be able to think.
Think, right. Yeah, because
If you're just thinking, you're not going to
yeah,
find the answer. You're going to drive yourself crazy and you're going to guess wrong because you're too much in your masculine. So you
right,
got to come down
right,
into your feminine, and you got to feel. How does this make me feel? How does this person make me feel? How does this situation make me feel? And once you start getting into the feeling of things, then you can come back up here and say, okay, I feel like this, and this, and this, and this. So I'm coming to the conclusion that it's this, and this.
exactly. Yeah, because when you feel, you're dealing with again magnetism. When you're feeling, or when you magnify something, you expand it. So when you expand something, then you have the capacity to be able to see it. But see,
Mm-hmm.
again, people want to cut off the feeling, which doesn't give them a level of empathy to see something outside of their own scope of awareness. So there is never any level of healing, which then leads to just, victim mentality or pointing the finger at somebody else, which is detrimental to them and stagnant to their own, growth and healing.
Yes.
So healing, people say healing, but that's the name of the game. Like, you're never going to get to a higher level of consciousness if you don't ever go through a level of trauma. Because people want to be loved, they want love, but love never appears as something that's pretty and beautiful. And love is dark. It's going to disrupt and dismantle everything within your experiences to test to see if you're really ready to experience what true inner love really feels like.
Mm.
I always say that everybody on the outside of you serves as a catalyst just to stimulate and bring about a certain level of love that you have within you, whether you like the person, whether you don't like the person. These are all reflections of
Boom.
yourself, that have been cascaded within your reality as a stigma or as a simulation. Let's just say a simulation. But these are different aspects of who you are, so that way you see what you need to learn from based on who you are by being in the relationship with the person outside of you. You see, so I always say love is self-induced. It's a self-induced phenomena. When you have the experience of feeling love for your child, that feeling isn't coming from the outside in, it's coming from the inside out. So
That is
when you
correct.
can get the capacity to embrace the same level of love that you think you have for your children, for yourself, then that becomes the factor in a level of self-healing, and
Mm-hmm.
self-acknowledgement, accountability. You know what I'm saying? So that's one fact. That's one thing that people tend to lack is the accountability. Um, and that's a whole problem. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I want you, because we're now coming up on an hour,
Hmm.
I want you to give us a foresight prediction, if you will, based upon the algorithms that you've been peeping out in terms of the collective. What do you think that what are you picking up on? What do you see?
Uh, so okay, so I'm gonna just speak, for the collective. Um, like we were speaking about before, we're talking about the body. The body is evolving, the physical body. The body is evolving because the space that we're in, the planet, let's just say the planet Earth, is entering a higher wattage. Some people, you know, can't go. Some people
Uh,
can go.
That is correct.
This is all predicated on what we are speaking about, which is healing.
Yep.
So you're going to start to see a wedge be created between two worlds, and it's going to be very distinct. Distinctful. You can be able to see it. You can see it now.
I was
You
gonna
know,
say, bro, I'm starting to see it now. And I mean, it's blatant. It's blatant. It's not
it's
even that I'm
blatant.
second guessing it, or am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? No, it's right there.
It's blatant. It's blatant. So, You know, our again, going back within the inside, our DNA is a crystal and it's responding to the sun via the information the sun is presenting, because the prescribed information that's naturally encoded within us, predicated on our DNA, um, self-assembling itself into more of a crystalline nature, is going to refine the physical body to thus then allow the physical body to exist a lot longer, to then
Hmm.
even get to the capacity to where we can technically die and keep the body, go through an experience of an initiation or a death ritual, but then be able to come out of it and teach it and expand people's consciousness by allowing them to know that not only does death not exist, but also when you get to the other side, you have choices. You also have assignments. You have things that you have to get over on that end. You have enemies that you have to, fight. That you have, uh, you know, experiences that you go through that aren't necessarily physical. So, a lot of people are going to be able to go through a process where they experience some level of initiation, but it's more in a state of a trance, you
Hmm.
know and the concept is to begin that process by going into meditation, and going into a place of no thought, because
So,
I can see
your prediction is a bigger split.
it's a bigger split, and that's just for the collective. Now people who follow me, because I tend to like drop things in real time. When people follow me, they'll be able, because I want our people to become more abstract thinkers, for themselves, decoders on their own. Because if you give them everything that's going to happen, they tend to situate themselves predicated on what the teacher said, as opposed to focusing on what their cosmic script is within the narrative. You
Okay,
see,
yeah, that's true.
so for me, I give them the general and what's to play out, and then you pick whatever side you're going to be on. But the idea again is to focus on what's happening within your own immediate reality, and understand that again the physical body is naturally evolving, so you have to do things that are conducive to continue that process, and I'm fortunate enough to be, because my partner, my girl, she's been through, I'm talking like higher levels of initiation,
Hmm.
processes that a lot of us haven't been privy to go through. But again, it's about doing the work, and really being able to get to the level where the general population is supposed to get to. But again, there's a huge divide that's happening, and you'll begin to see that there's two sides that's being created. One are the ones that, like Kendrick said, are like us, and then the other ones are like them. So I just want, yeah, and just to finish off real quick, I just want people to really begin to engage in their own realities. Understand that all of it is spiritual. Again, you picking your clothes out for work is spiritual. You marry the two worlds together. That's what they qualify as the grand unified theorem. You bring the physical with the spiritual by acknowledging the present, and by understanding that all you're doing is observing a wave that possesses information about the future. Now, whatever you're being presented within your own immediate reality, second to second, to second, when you acknowledge the fact that it contains information that's rolling backwards from the future, then you can predict the future, quote unquote. You see, so you know, the question is again, what side are you going to end up on? And that's predicated on not only doing the healing, but also understanding that when you go through undesirable experiences, the universe is testing you, because it's going to see if you have the courage to be able to get through and go to where you're supposed to, where you're supposed to be at. And once you get there, then your reality will, like you said, you'll see that the grass is greener on the other side. But it's about getting through the dark spaces. So yeah,
And,
I'll
the easiest way that you're going to make it through those dark spaces is through that healing, guys. That's the easiest way that you're going to make it through there, because those tests come all kinds of ways. And there are certain energies that look for a person's weaknesses, that have the ability to go in and excavate those weaknesses if you have not taken the time out to be in an active healed lifestyle, or just being in that space. or you haven't healed from certain things, that energy has the ability to come in and affect, excavate those unhealed areas of yourself. And if you're not careful because you're not present with what's going on with you, it's very easy for you to go down a whole different direction. Very easy for people to do that.
Right.
And people, and then also there's the energy also will excavate the ego and make it feel like it's justified in its actions when you're in an unhealed space. So if you're not careful and you're not present with your energy, it's very easy to be influenced and swayed by anything outside of you, whether it be people, places, and things. Very easy for you to be swayed, not
Right.
knowing which way you're going to go, not knowing who to believe, feeling that you have unnecessary pressure placed on you and things of that nature. If you feel that way, then it's because you don't know who you are.
hmm And I want to add this really quick too, is that, I always tell myself, like, there's nothing inherently wrong. There's
That's
nothing
true.
wrong. There's nothing wrong. I've always put in perspective that the universe is conspiring in your favor, whether it's negative or positive. The idea is just to be optimistic and understand that, again, these are assignments that are given to you. We talk about that we want the ancestors to intervene and things of that nature, but you're only going to tap into these different aspects of yourself only when you start to move with a certain order within your third dimensional reality, because this reality is
Hmm.
nothing but a shadow of a hyperdimensional reality, but you can't
Yeah.
tap into that space if you're not coordinating and orientating your body in this reality in a certain way in order to tap into that type of energy. So one thing too, I want to ask you, Isis, before we go, because I want to give the family two sides to this. Um, what, from your perspective, do you see for the collective, or what do you see based on what's playing out now? That's going to happen here in the future. What are your, like? What are
I
your?
see
Let's
the
just take your
collective making a
predictions.
conscious decision. I'm seeing the collective making a conscious decision to heal. I see the collective coming out of war programming. I see the collective coming together on a unified consciousness to get rid of the old things that have been plaguing the people for so long. And I'm starting to see that play out in front of my face right now. I actually have more of a hopeful and optimistic um, outcome in terms of what it is that I'm seeing. I see a lot of changes coming about. I see the people no longer going along with the status quo. I start seeing people prioritizing things totally different than how they were before. They're going to
Hmm
start prioritizing themselves more. Um, I see us moving more into the space of unity consciousness, as it pertains to the collective. Now, of course, you're going to have your few that's going to be on the other side. And I can talk to you about what I see going on for that other side, because I want you to understand something. There's going to be two different realities going on here.
hmm hmm
There's a reality for the people who went down a different path, and there's a reality for people who choose to continue to gravitate and go into the higher dimensions and continue to keep elevating and expanding their consciousness.
hmm
And what I'll say is that there are things that's going to go down, but just know that those who are choosing to elevate won't have any experiences or experience anything, let's say, that the other side may experience, um, because they're choosing to go down a different path. We live in
Right.
a planet of duality. And so in that duality that's playing itself out, you know the game.
hmm
You're either choosing to elevate or you're not.
hmm
And that's
hmm
okay if you don't want to elevate. But just
hmm
understand you're not getting into the higher timelines and you're not going to get into the higher dimensions, which means what?
Right.
That means that whatever's taking place on that third dimension between the third and the fourth, you will be subject to that if that's where you want to be. If you're choosing to go higher, you'll be subject to that. If
hmm
that's where you choose you want to be.
hmm hmm
So we're talking about two different things going on here literally at the same time. So you got war going on over there on that other side. People are in the war programming and all that craziness and death and all that. The death programming and all that. That's cool. If people want to be on that type time, that's cool. You got people getting more into the AI, getting more into the artificial things, um, not wanting to tap back into nature or connect to nature and things of that nature. So there is a different reality for those individuals that are operating in that space
Mm-hmm.
versus those who are operating on a higher level or a different level,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to have a total different reality. They won't even see or experience like that, depending on the
Right.
frequency, depending on their frequency. There's a lot of times where I miss a lot of stuff, and I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about, fam, because I'm over here. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I didn't hear
Mm-hmm.
about what's going on over there because I'm not paying attention to what's going on over there. I'm paying attention to what's going on over here.
Right. Yeah. Because you see with your mind.
Yes.
I've used this analogy before where I say, an electrician and a plumber can walk into the same room and see a completely different room. So when we're talking about shifting into a new world, we're not talking about necessarily the outer world changing. The outer world may look the same. It's your perspective of that world that's going to change. It's the
Yeah.
way that you view things in your own personal reality that's going to change. Because again, we live in a cesspool of information within the space that we exist in. So the third dimension is only 2% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum that we can visibly see. So when we start to tap into higher and hyper dimensional, realities, we're tapping into a larger spectrum of light, which is information, which thus changes the way our optical our optical, our vision begins, our how can I say this? We begin to change the way we visually see our reality.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
So
100%. 100%. I know for me, it's been a whole different thing going. It's been a whole different ride over here because literally everybody's just chill. Everybody's happy. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm in a whole different space. So when people say this going on, I'm like, for real? Because that ain't what's happening over here, fam. I gotta be
right,
honest with you. You know what I'm saying? Like
right,
I'm experiencing a whole different reality and everything is very cool over this way. You know what
exactly,
I'm saying? So we choose, right? We make the choices about what we're going to entertain in our reality. I co-create with Source and tell Source I'm going to experience the best that this timeline has to offer. Period. So I co-create with Source to create that for my life, and that's what I'm experiencing.
exactly. Same, like you said, you make a choice. So yeah, for the family, I'll leave them with a little something. You know, we were speaking about healing, we were speaking about science, we touched on, the eclipse, what the eclipse was about. um we talked about, two different worlds being created simultaneously. So with all that being said, it really boils down to, your self inventory, taking heed to, removing the victim mentality, taking
Bruh.
accountability for your own actions, because you are an architect of your own reality. Don't get too caught up in personality worship when it comes to a lot of these teachers either. Be an individual and realize that you're just as powerful as you may see the people on YouTube uh, talking and speaking and things of that nature. So I just want the family to really understand that the idea is to become God in real time. So when you
Boom.
can not only understand the mechanics of how your actual reality works, but you can function off of a healed heart, then you have all the power in the world. So then you don't have to run to any teacher or any book or anything outside of you, because it's all happening within. So I'll leave the family with that.
Okay. Alkebulan 44, ladies and gentlemen. Tell the people how they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, Alkebulan underscore 44. You can find me on IG.
And you guys need to go check him out because he's going to be dropping the science and the algorithms. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. And on that
Yeah,
note, do you want to take any questions?
we can take a couple before we get off. We can take a couple.
Okay. Does any of you guys have any questions? Now's your chance to go ahead and ask your questions. If you have a couple. He said,
Yeah,
"What was
some
your?" They said, "What was your IG again?" Repeat your IG again.
yeah, Alkebulan underscore 44. So how it's spelled in the caption, ALKEBULAN underscore 44. So you can find me on Instagram at Alkebulan underscore 44.
Okay. I just signed it. I thought so. Okay. One person said, "Your thoughts on weed and spirituality."
Ooh, oh, that's a whole whole conversation. I'll say this. For me, I, I used to be a heavy like smoker. I used to smoke a lot. Um, as of now, I don't. You know what I'm saying? But w- I'll dibble and dabble every once in a while. But see, when I do it, it's more recreational than not recreational. It's more purposeful than anything. So, I know for me personally, when I smoke weed, it puts me in a different space. It allows me to focus in and actually retain information a lot better. Um, the Dogon specifically, they understood, marijuana and what that represented. Because what it does is it actually stimulates a certain level of DMT within the lungs and it's secreted out, and stimulates a part of the pineal gland, causing pressure within the what you call pinealocytes that are the crystal that makes up the pineal gland, and that pressure is what allows you to retain the information while you're high. You see, so they say we will catch matter from series A, B, and C through the pineal gland, but they understood that again, the smoking stimulates the DMT to activate that pressure within the pineal gland to be able to retain information while you smoke. So for me, that's why I would do it. And of course, it has a spiritual aspect to it, but the spiritual aspect for me is that I'm able to retain information as I'm studying because I know the effects of what it does, to that specific gland.
Um, I'm going to answer this question. Daylin Howard asks, "I have a question. I haven't healed fully. I still feel low vibration. Is it too late to continue to heal?" No, it's not. And you're always going to continue healing. That's the key thing. You're never going to be fully healed. So just continue to keep healing.
Hmm.
That's all you have to do. Just continue to keep going. Do the best that you can.
Yeah, like I said, healing, people, we get caught up in people, one person may be healed faster than the other, but we got to put the blockers on and understand, our healing comes when it's supposed to. Maybe in the lack of healing, there's a lesson there that you got to learn, and because you probably continue to keep repeating the same cycles over and over, that just goes to show you that um, there is something that you haven't healed from. So when you may be able to spot a possibility to experience some level of uncomfortability and you voluntarily put yourself in that space, that's going to allow you to be able to synthesize and experience um, to graduate, let's say, to another level of healing because you're actually doing the work voluntarily. So yeah, don't be stagnant. If it's something that you got to change within your reality, you just got to do it, even if it's uncomfortable.
Okay. The next question is, when you mention initiating into higher frequency, are you saying the frequency movement requires initiation? And how do you qualify initiation guides?
How do you qualify initiation guides?
Yeah, that's what they're basically saying. Initiation guides. I don't know where that came from. That's what they're asking.
How do you qualify initiation guides? I mean, for me, it's all predicated on feeling. If you resonate with it, then it's real. It's not something that's tangible. So to qualify an initiation guide, that's based on too also how you're living your life. You can only judge yourself. So if you're doing some fucked up shit, if you're not living the best life, if you're doing some foul, out of pocket things, to
Hmm.
people, do you think that you're gonna be granted what you would qualify as a good I forgot guide per se or an initiation? It's based on you as a person, so you can only answer that question for yourself.
Okay. Well, we're done with the questions today, brother. I thank you so much for coming on board. I enjoyed you. I can't wait to do this again.
Absolutely.
I cannot wait to do this again. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate you having me. And yeah, until we talk again, peace and love to the family.
Peace and love. And also, guys, can you please get the likes up on the video? Because I forgot to ask you guys throughout the live. So I'd really appreciate it. Peace.
Peace, peace.